We've come to the end of our block of the month, the Little Bit Different sampler. We've been making rectangular blocks in 2023, and this version is called Windows. It's an easy square in a square stretched into a rectangle, and let's get our quilt put together. Making the square in a square section for our Windows block, I like to put a focal print in the middle, and if you have anything that's somewhat directional, make sure that it looks good on point. I've planned a horizontal layout for my blocks, but if you're planning a vertical, just pay attention to the alignment of any directional prints. Here's what I mean when I say you should be careful with directional prints. I cut these fabrics on the straight of grain, and then they're not going to show up straight in my quilt, because if I use a horizontal layout, my giraffe is a little bit off kilter, and this text print, again, whether you turn it horizontal or vertical, those words are going to be on an angle. It's fine. People throw quilts on their lap or on their bed, and it goes in all different directions. So it's not a huge problem, but it would look a little bit better if those directional prints were lined up correctly on the block. Back to our block construction. Then we're going to cut squares once on the diagonal so that we have triangles, and we will start by sewing those to opposite sides. I want to match the centers of my pieces, so I simply fold them in half, and then I've got a little crease line that I can match up. So I will match the centers of those pieces and pin that in place, because you need those dog ears on either side to make sure that you have the correct seam allowance on your center square. When we have the first two triangles in place, we can simply finger press that open and repeat the process to find the center of our square. And put our other two triangles in place. I can see where that crease is on both sides, and I just put a pin right there in the center. Once you have the square in a square unit trimmed to the correct size, making sure you have a 1/4 inch on all the corners, then we will add our last two pieces to make our rectangular blocks for the Little Bit Different sampler. Ta-da! Here is the finished Windows block. That is number 12 in our Little Bit Different sampler. So we are ready to put our blocks together. Let me show you a couple different layouts. Baubles is the quilt design that came to mind when I started playing with the Windows blocks. Laying them horizontal and creating a pyramid layout reminded me of an old-fashioned glass-blown Christmas tree decoration, which is where the name came from. I think this would make a great I Spy quilt layout. Each month I have designed a quilt that goes along with each single block, but you can also use those layouts to finish all 12 Little Bit Different sampler blocks. Let's recap. In January, we started with a straight layout, some sashing and cornerstones for triangles galore. In February, we added negative space to create a checkerboard layout. And in March, we took the block design and enlarged it for a dramatic border in contained. Clusters groups the blocks in the corners of the quilt. Flower Market puts the blocks around a center grouping, which can be a focus fabric. And Bumpy Road is a more modern version with the different rows of blocks and lots of negative space. Loyalty is another simple grid layout with some alternate plain fabric squares. Streaks puts the blocks into columns, and you can have fun playing with the spacing there for a pleasing arrangement. Twist groups the different blocks into smaller graphic segments, very eye-catching. Using just 12 blocks means we can only make half of our diamond from the October pattern, but Flocks Above from November spins our blocks around both horizontally and vertically, so you can have a lot of fun with that layout. It can be hard to imagine what a sampler quilt would look like, so I have gone ahead and made some mock-ups with some of these layouts. So you can see the traditional grid from Triangles Galore. Here is what the Loyalty layout would look like, so a little more negative space and no sashing or cornerstones. And finally, the Bumpy Road modern layout from June is a lot of fun to make some different groupings of those blocks and play with that negative space. Here's the layout I chose for my 12 blocks in the Little Bit Different sampler quilt. I simply positioned all of the blocks into rows, and then I had lots of negative space to do some free motion quilting. I even spelled out the name of the quilt here on the front. For the borders, I just had fun grabbing some scraps from my stash and making this piano key type border with large squares. I can't wait to see your version of the Little Bit Different sampler, so please share and tag me online or send me an email. That would be even better. I'm looking forward to lots more scrappy projects next year. What's on your list of things to make?